Greetings and welcome to Become a Competent Biblical Counselor. My name is Dr. Dave Jones, and today's episode is entitled, I'd Rather See a Sermon. In the scripture I want to use today is found in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8. And it says, And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you always having all sufficiency in all things may have an abundance for every good work. I want to start this episode off with a cute little poem that my grandmother gave me when I was 10 years old. And it's quite revealing, but it's the purpose of this episode. And it starts out by saying, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I'd rather one would walk with me than merely tell the way. The eye is a better pupil and more willing than the ear. Fine counsel is confusing, but examples always clear. The best of all the preachers are the men who live their creeds, for to see good put in action is what everybody needs. I soon can learn to do it if you'll let me see it done. I can watch your hands and actions, but your tongue too fast may run. The lectures you deliver may be very wise and true, but I'd rather get my lessons by observing what you do. I learned a long time ago when I first got into the counseling ministry, some of the things that I was looking for and I couldn't find for the longest time was an attitude that said, don't tell me what to do, show me what to do. I'm not too much interested in your preaching to me. Take me by the hand and show me what I should do, because I just don't know what to do. So I struggled. I learned some things, but there's a technique that I've learned, and it's a wonderful thing. I use it to this day. Every single day I use this, especially the times when I go to church. And I want to share this with you because you might have some people calling you with some issues that you might be able to use this example as something you can help them with to see a sermon rather than to hear one. And I'm going to tell you some examples of what that is and how that works, and I think you're going to be excited about it, and I'm glad to share it with you. To this day, when I go to church on Sunday, my attitude is I'm going expecting a blessing. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to get it from the pastor's sermon. It doesn't mean that I have to look around and look at the pictures on the walls and think about, well, this is a blessing to me. I'm being blessed by the stained glass and the colors and the beauty, and I'm being blessed by being involved with the people and being here on Sunday and just enjoying church. Well, all of that is important, sure, but there's another element that I want to give you some examples of that I have experienced in my life, and I do just about every Sunday, not only in church, but outside of church. Let me explain. So I go to church expecting a blessing. I went to church a couple of years ago, I guess it is, and I'd never been in this church before. And I walked in, and the choir is getting ready to sing, and I sit down in the back of the church, and I'm just listening to the choir. Now, I cannot hear individual voices. I can't hear how well they're singing or whatever, but I saw a lady in the front row singing. Now, that's not unusual in the choir, but the point is the way she was singing, I could tell that she was singing the message of the song. She was really into worshiping by singing the song, and the way that she was singing that song, she loved expressing how important that song was to her. That was my blessing. And after church, I went to her and I said, excuse me, I said, you don't know me, I'm a visitor here today, but I want you to know you are a blessing to me today. And she says, really? What, really? Nobody's ever said that to me. I said, well, you needed to hear the fact that I enjoyed watching you sing. I couldn't hear what you were singing, but I saw the way that you were singing. Let me hasten to say this. I would much rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I didn't know what kind of a singer she was, but she blessed me by the way that she sang, she really enjoyed and cherished the message of that song. And what was equally important was that she be made aware of just how she inadvertently and very innocently was a blessing to someone. What do you think the rest of her day was like? She was probably very excited about the fact that went home and told people that some man I don't even know told me I was a blessing to him today because of how I sang. Guess what she's going to sound like and be next Sunday? Just as good, I'm sure. There was another church years ago that I used to go to. It was a quiet little country church up in the mountains of Georgia. And I would watch people interact with each other, and I would always find a blessing. For example, the chairman of the deacon board, his name's Frank. He was a retired medical doctor. And whenever he stood up in church and spoke about Jesus Christ, you could hear the emotion in his voice on how thankful and grateful and how much he was in love with his Lord and Savior. Wow, what a blessing that was to me. And I would tell him, Frank, you are a real blessing to me today, the way that you show your love for Christ. David and Tammy Miller used to walk into church holding hands. And whenever David would look and talk to his wife, he would look at her, not just as a person, he would look at her in her eyes. You could just tell that he was really in love with his wife, and he showed that by how he talked to her, how he held her hand, how he just gloated over her, to which I would tell him when I could, man, you're a real blessing to me on how much you love your wife and what kind of a husband you are in the example that Christ has given us to be husbands. And then there was a man who was a member of the church, and his wife was so sickly at home that she couldn't come to church, but he was always praying for his wife. What a love. What a love that was, and what a blessing that was. So many times when I go to church, I go expecting a blessing. I might get it from the people who are in the church, the way that they are interacting or whatever, but it's important for me to tell them how much of a blessing that they were. You see what the difference is? I looked for a blessing. I didn't know from where the blessing was going to come, but I looked for the blessing. This is Saturday. Tomorrow I'm going to go to church, and I already know I'm going to go expecting a blessing. I'm not going to be looking for it at the choir. I'm not going to be looking for it in any. It's just going to happen. Somehow I'm going to get a blessing, and I'm going to nudge my wife, and I'm going to say, I got my blessing today. And she's going to say, where? And I might say, see that usher right there? Watch him. Just watch him. And she'll smile. She said, yeah, he's really, look how he talks to people. He's really having a good time with people. I said, yeah, he's a blessing to me today. And I'll go and I'll tell him. You're going to have people come to you with counseling issues. And instead of saying, well, count your blessings, name them one by one. That's a song that we used to sing when we were kids, remember? We don't do that anymore. But why not? Why not encourage your counselees to say, you know what? You should see a sermon, look for a sermon, rather than hearing one, and explain to them just what I showed you, how I experienced my everyday Sunday activities. Oh, but wait a minute. Let me hasten to say one more thing. It doesn't have to be just at church. I was in a grocery store not long ago, and the cashier that was checking me out was such a wonderful, wonderful woman. She was so happy. She was so courteous. She was so thankful. She was so uplifting that I told her, you know what? You're a blessing to me today. And she said, what? I said, you are a blessing the way this store ought to. In fact, I want to speak to your supervisor. They should be so thankful to have somebody like you at this particular place, because I'm going to come here from now on because of you. She stood there and she started crying. She says, nobody has ever said that to me. People coming through the line sometimes are rude and hateful, and they're not very nice people. Nobody has ever told me that. And I said, you know what? I told you that. And every time I come here, it's going to be because of you. Help your counselees understand it does not have to be something that they have to do and take into their lives on Sundays at church. They can do it outside of church too. They can do it in their everyday life. Look for a blessing. Tell them to look for a blessing. You take somebody who's sad and depressed and full of discouragement and whatever, and say, now I want you to go out and I want you to find blessings. Wait for a blessing. It's not necessarily looking to see how beautiful the sky is. No, I'm talking about unexpected blessings that you could just smile and say, wow. It could be, you could be listening to a song, a Christian song, on the radio in your car. And maybe the message of a song is going to just hit you differently today than you've ever been touched before. And the exciting thing about realizing that is being able to go up to somebody and tell them, you know what, you were a blessing to me today for what you just did, or for what you didn't do, or what you said to somebody, or what you didn't say to somebody. You were a blessing to me. That's all you need to say. What you have done for them is huge, but what that person has done for themselves, especially if they're a counselee, now they've totally looked at life totally different. There are some things that they can be blessed and thankful for. There are some sermons that they can see that they don't have to listen to. They could observe what people do. And at the same time, they can be those people too, to be a blessing to somebody else. So there you go. There's a new idea. That's something I use every single day. I use it with my counselees. You use that too. I'd much rather see a sermon than hear one. Don't tell me what to do. Show me what to do. And when you show me what to do, hey, I'm blessed. And you need to tell them that. So I hope this helps. I hope this is something you can use. Think about it. Oh, and by the way, that lady that I spoke about, the first church I went to, she was singing in the choir. A year later, I married that woman. Anyway, true story. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you. Good night.